morning, Matt.
This is my understanding of step 1, 2 and 3. We'll start with a biggie. Step 1. Step 1 has made me realise all I've done all my life is just gone round that endless loop. I became trapped in obsession, compulsion, self-centred routines, just endless and endless loops, and that just led to nowhere but physical, mental, spiritual and emotional decay. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. Life of chaos, destruction, misery and loneliness. Disease of addiction for me was more of a relief than, realising I suffered with a disease. It wasn't just me choosing to pick up drink on a daily basis since a young age. And then I started to realise it was a threefold illness: spiritually void, mentally insane and emotionally broke. And it gave me a bit of inspiration in 2015 when I realised, when I spoke to Carl Molyneux, there is other people out there that think like me, feel like me. And when I started looking into it, it can't be wrong. 66,000 meetings a day in 140 countries with people who all suffer with a disease of addiction. And then I look into denial, that delusional thinking, insane behaviours and actions around my drinking, even to the stage where I just had to drink to do normal things, always looking at other people thinking, why can't I do that? Why is it when people walk across a bridge, they can walk across a bridge? Why is it when I walk across a bridge, I'm fighting with fear of jumping over? Even recently, just on Saturday, I'm walking alongside a float for the orchestra in that parade, and my head was telling me to keep put my foot under the wheel to see whether it had hurt or not. I mean, obviously it had crushed it, but just mad thoughts like that coming in, that delusional thinking. Where's it coming from? I don't know where it's coming from. Powerlessness, hitting rock bottom, despair and isolation. I hit rock bottom very, very, very young when I was very young. Isolating internally in my head, not feeling part of anything, even in school, even in my family. Felt different to my brothers and sisters, I blamed it on middle child syndrome, but it's just, I don't know why I felt like I was different. I used to hide away in cupboards and build little dens, so there's only one way out and one way in, so no one could get me. That was probably around seeing a lot of violence off my dad to my mum when I was a young kid. Become very scared of people shouting and just scared of everything, really. The powerlessness, that is like just acting on everything, no control over anything, acting. Even in my character, becoming a different person, because felt powerless to fit into society, to do normal things. Just a fear of everything. And even just crossing the road I was fearful of, and then I got run over, so that just made it even worse. Just the powerlessness, admitting into it, yeah. Accepting surrender, powerlessness, accepting surrender is the vital from freedom from powerlessness, which then makes me very unmanageable inward and outwards. My head's always like a coiled Christmas tree light string, in a big knot, just completely powerless to live life on life's terms. As a young kid, that obsession, that I had no defence at all to acting on that first thought and feeling, and then compulsively acting on that all the time. But it always involved drink, it always involved something that's going to numb that feeling that I'm getting. I don't know what comes first, the feelings or the thoughts, Do we get feelings from thoughts or thoughts from feelings? I just couldn't balance life. Reservations, just a small measure of control I tried to keep, around if I could deal with the death of a loved one. Now, loved ones with me, I struggled because I didn't know what love was really. I only ever felt pain. I only ever felt a feeling when something went wrong with my kids. But unconditional love's there, innit? And it's growing stronger today. I have witnessed my daughter giving birth to my grandson, my first grandson, and people used to say, have you ever had your heart broken? Well, I know what a broken heart feels like, and I got through that. But I think today, going through the steps and doing what I should be doing, I could probably, it's one of those, it would be a case of, dealing with it if it ever happened. And spiritual principles for me in step one is definitely honesty, to stay open-minded, but I can be closed-minded around things, because I've always sort of ran on self, everything I've done in my life, it's always been about me, my self-will, my control of around what I do, keeping that shield around me not to let people in, I'll let people so far in and then push them away, and that just leads to me being isolated again, because I push them away, and it makes them feel unwanted. It makes them feel like they're not worth to be in my life, and then I'll go into self-pity and basically sort of go on about no one cares, and it's happened recently in my relapse, which is a big eye-opener for sort of like self-awareness and self-exploration inside, why I do this, why I feel like this, why I think this. So, and I'm sure, it's about showing the willingness, being visual, being willing, but inside being willing as well, not sort of thinking I'll do this as an exercise like at uni and then I'll get on my way. It's about telling yourself, this is life or death, you know what I mean? It's life or death stuff. And I don't think sometimes a drink would kill me. It's a loneliness and the disease would convince me to hang myself, which I've tried before, take overdoses, which I've tried before, self-harm, trying to release that inner pain, And then, humility is like, to me, it's being humble around others, but being vulnerable in your recovery, being vulnerable in your just life. If something's bothering you or you don't feel right, or just being, vocalising it and being like, listening to people. So if you're going to vocalise something that where you're at, which is really bad and making you feel really uncomfortable, you've got to be open-minded to then listen to suggestions, and take on other people's thoughts around things. Acceptance, that is massive for me. I don't accept myself, so I don't think others should accept me, and I've always struggled with that in my life. And all that not feeling part of, again, you just fall back into that loop, that endless loop. Hopefully this time round, manage to step out of that loop, but always remembering where to come from, because you can easily fall back into that loop. It's like a hamster wheel that never stops. Moving on. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. To me, that is basically, there is a solution. There is a way out. Like a lot of other diseases, people get, cancers and stuff like that in life. They get terminal. This isn't terminal. This there is a way out, but it's up to us to put the action in. Hope. I have hope, just to be able to live the rest of my life in abstinence, and be there for my kids, and be happy because I'm happy. Not use that that mask of, yeah, everything's okay and joking about and laughing, but you know, deep down inside when you end up on your own, sat in your bedroom or in your flat or wherever, and it's a lonely, dark place, you know. I always used to say it's a bit like an actor coming off stage and sitting in the dressing room taking all the stuff off and just looking in the mirror and thinking, who the fuck's that, you know, not being happy with yourself. Insanity again, it's just doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is massive. Again, me, done it all my life. You know, stick your hand in the fire, it's going to burn, but why do we do it again knowing what's coming? That to me is, and I mean a lot of stuff people say you're insane when you do stuff like, you know, me, I was always wanting acceptance, and I do really mad things like pee on electric fences and end up getting a shot right through me lower abdomen, and then jumping off buildings and green stitcher fractures in both my ankles, you know, getting just doing really mental things, not actually accepting it could kill me, but I'm doing it just to be that idiot, you know. Everyone will like me if I stick my head in the oven like on full, and you know, and when I was under the influence of alcohol, I would just do anything. I've set my pubes on fire, set my back on fire with petrol running up the back street. I've jumped ramps made on big wheelie bins, on big bins, the old bins, on BMXs, straight over the handlebar. Just, why? Why am I like that? Because I want people to like me. I want people to like me, and for them to like me, I need to watch them. They watch me suffer. And you know, coming to believe, when I was in recovery the last time, you know, I have a good contact with God, and God to me isn't a guy with a white beard. To me, it's like a force that I feel inside, you know, and just going to church and reading literature and doing all church stuff and that is just, it strengthens that force inside. That's what it is to me. You know, I don't believe it's about just, you know, God's a person, and I always believe as well, you know, when that coming to believe, it's, you know, we have to stand in front of our power greater than, not behind. There's a lot of times I've hid behind the higher power, you know, my higher power will sort, or it's what my higher powers, you know, guided me to do, and we can't hide behind our higher power. And I also realise the power greater than themselves is anything or anybody outside of ourselves. Again, I've just explained that restoration to sanity. Basically, it's returning something broken to its former glory. I look at it like an old car, you know, and people do it up. It takes years and years, but sometimes around health problems, that we have to have things, you know, to the extreme. It's like, you know, people have to have liver transplants. You know, there's some parts of that car that can't be restored. But the idea is to restore it to its former glory. There's no point just making it look nice and shiny, and you know, it looks really nice, and you open the doors and the fucking seats are still ripped and the steering wheel's hanging off. It's about inside outwards, you know. Spiritual principles, again, for step 2 is open-mindedness. And I think that's around the connection with your higher power as well. Be open-minded. There is something out there that is powerful, more powerful than us. Because our disease is very powerful, yeah. And I love that the powerlessness in that is because it's less power. You know, our disease is strong, and the more connection and the strength we get from our higher power, it's going to give us that strength to fight against our disease. Because our disease is, it's always been the driver of the bus, basically. Willingness again to do what I've said, and we need faith and trust for hope. we've got to have that faith, you know, we've got to have that trust. And again, about being vulnerable, showing humility, showing, being a nice person around others, showing empathy and a lot of other qualities we can get through working the steps. On to step 3. You know, for me, by this time, when we get to step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of a God as we understood Him. To me, that decision is, you know, strengthened by the step before and keep looking round step 1. I don't want to be in that life no more. You know, I don't want to just be known as Mark who's a pisshead or Mark who's a, you know what I mean? And I've been like that. I've been, you know, I go home sometimes to my hometown and remember the sort of like last few days I spent there before I came into recovery last time. And, you know, I was just a guy who walked through town with his carrier bag with vodka and stuff, and dirty, scruffy, head down, sun was shining, I've got a coat on, and just hiding away from the world. So that's making the decision, you know. But you've got to put the action in, and you've got to apply the work. You've got to apply what we learn through the steps, and then we've got to maintain it. It's okay putting action in and applying it for a bit, but it's a maintenance. That's the, you know, the big part. Otherwise, it's meaningless without. And understanding as well, God works through others. You know, we're in this room today. We all work for each other. God works through us all. Or our higher power works through us all, you know, your sponsors, your peers, even people in general in society. You know, there's a lot of knowledge out there around just life skills, self-will, again. I've suffered with self-will a lot since a young age because I became that lone wolf, locked in that shield and not let anyone in. I didn't really have any parental guidance. So I had to suss things out for myself by watching, observing, learning. Obviously everybody you're watching and learning off isn't doing it the right way, you know what I mean? But you think that is the right way, especially when you're a kid. So turning it over, knowing what it is, you know, what we're turning over, what are we turning over? Prayer, meditation and belief, you know. Belief's massive. No point getting on your knees I always get on my knees, I'll admit that. I can pray lying down, looking up ceiling, mate. I can pray in the day just by shutting my eyes, sitting somewhere, you know, and just that connection. It's not just about on your knees, it's not going to church. Church is just a meeting place. You know, my God of understanding, God is with me all the time, which gives me that bit of relief. I'm not on my own. But I have walked away from my higher power greater than, and very easily your disease will sit next to you then, and he wants you on your own. He wants you on your own. He wants you to die. He wants you to be lonely. So that's when we turn it over. Again, always strengthening and maintaining our decision on a daily basis, which is God's will, which will lead us to freedom, peace and serenity. Jump back to our self-will, which we do sometimes. We need to think ahead, you know, before we put a feeling, a thought into action. Think about where it's going to lead, because it will only lead to, in the end, destruction, chaos and pain to myself and to others as well. I understand today whatever bad decision I make doesn't just affect me. You know, it affects my kids, it affects my peers, it affects everybody who's involved in your life at that moment. So surrender, spiritual principles, surrender. Surrender's vital to step 3. If you haven't already surrendered in 2, or you haven't decided you want to surrender because you're in 1, you might just keep that little bit for yourself. When it says surrender as well, to me it's about doing a full exploration of what's going on inside. Because my experiences, I've always kept something back. I've done the steps twice, and I've always kept something back. And you know, I kept a couple of things back in my first attempt. I kept one thing back in my second attempt, thinking, you know, I'm not exposing that, the guilt, the shame, the disgust, you know, I'm not doing it. God already knew it had happened, you know, my higher power already knew it had happened because it's always been with me through my life, but I think sometimes we have to go back into the darkness, you know, to find that spirit of your higher power and realise this little mouse, you know, because it's not the big elephants that are killers, it's a little mouse. This little mouse needs to be let out, it needs to be aired. And you know, I've done that, and the freedom I've got from that is, you know, it's, and I just don't feel, I still struggle around the shame and the guilt, but I'm not embarrassed. See, shame and embarrassment, shame's inner, embarrassment's how we look, you know, we're embarrassed to go in a room, but shame's deep rooted, isn't it? I'm not embarrassed no more about it, I'm not embarrassed about talking about it, but I still do feel internal shame of it. Willingness, hope, trust and faith, again, commitment. Step 3 is a commitment, and if you put, you know, you build on your faith and your trust, your commitment will grow stronger. But again, it's all about maintaining, and you know, it's all about checking in with your higher power whenever you need to, not trying to sort of work it out for yourself, or as again I said, you know, your higher power works through people, so when you actually voice a problem or how you're feeling, you know, your higher power's working through that person, and because we're all the same in here, we're all equal, we all suffer from the same disease, any suggestion is a good suggestion, unless someone tells you to go get a bottle of vodka, well then that would be coming from their disease and their self-will. So yeah, that's step 1, 2 and 3. I hope you've understood it, and I hope, you know, you've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.